Thank you very much for having me. It is so fun to be back in Carolina. It's been 3 years plus since I've been in Chapel Hill. So I got in last night, and it was so fun to walk around campus and to see all the new buildings and just fantastic facilities. I was telling a bunch of people earlier today that it's just astonishing that you guys have actually built good-looking buildings to hide the bad-looking buildings. It just, there was a lot of bad buildings that were designed when I was here, or they were here when I was here. And it's nice that they're all sort of, you can't find them anymore. They're still there, but there's trees and other buildings covering them up, which is nice. So, so what I thought I'd do is I'll test the AV equipment here real quickly. First by unmuting this, and then the second thing I was going to do is actually show, for those that aren't aware of Hulu and what we do, probably better to have Alec Baldwin describe it than me. And so I'm going to share with you just a quick 60-second thing here, and then we'll get going. And this is also going to test your internet connection here, which I don't think is too good, but let's see how this goes.
Hello, Earth. I'm Alec Baldwin, TV star. You know, they say TV will rot your brain. That's absurd. TV only softens the brain, like a ripe banana. To take it all the way, we've created Hulu. Hulu beams TV directly to your portable computing devices, giving you more of the cerebral gelatinizing shows you want, anytime, anywhere, for free. I only hang out because I want your love. Mushy mush. And the best part is there's nothing you can do to stop it. I mean, what are you going to do, turn off your TV and your computer? Once your brains are reduced to a cottage cheese like mush, they'll scoop them out with a melon bowler and gobble them right on up. Oops, I think I'm truly alone. Because we're aliens, and that's how we roll. Hulu, an evil plot to destroy the world. Enjoy.
So that's Hulu, as Alec Baldwin describes it. I will switch over to the actual prezo. By the way, that was our first foray into actually advertising Hulu. We did that on February 1st, 2008, or February 1st, 2009, earlier this year. And it was a big deal for us because A, we're a startup, and we spent a lot of money on Alec Baldwin and the actual production of that. I don't even think I need, is it okay if I just talk this way without a mic? That'd be better. It was a big deal for us to spend a lot of money producing that ad in New York City, and then ultimately we like to go big at Hulu, so we bought 2 commercial spots on the Super Bowl, and so this ran on the Super Bowl, 60 seconds. We didn't think we could get the story out in 30 seconds, so we actually spent 2 ad units, and they go for $2.5 million each, and our business jumped 60% as a result of this ad. So we already had 20 million users, and we jumped over north of 30 million users from March going forward. And in February, the numbers were even higher because of the halo of the Super Bowl. But the Super Bowl was a big deal for us. And this evil plot has continued with Seth MacFarlane from Family Guy, Eliza Dushku from Dollhouse, and also Dennis Leary from Rescue Me. So we're really excited about this evil plot to destroy the world and the fact that people are enjoying it. So that's a little bit of a kickoff. I thought what I would do is obviously talk about Hulu. In terms of a show of hands, just so I can kind of get a good sense of sort of how deep I should go in terms of just introducing Hulu. Who here has either heard of Hulu or used Hulu? That is great. This is fantastic. So just know that we haven't been around long. So we launched March of last year, March 12th of 2008. So before that, nobody had heard of Hulu. And I oftentimes would be in an environment and sort of ask people if they had ever heard of Hulu, and they looked at me like I had 10 heads. So it's very fun to actually be in a room where so many people have heard of Hulu. And so, in fact, it's funny, we've got these, the team members have these black T-shirts that just say Hulu on them. And when we travel, we just tend to kind of wear them in the airport or whatnot on these red eyes. And I knew that Hulu was making progress when I went through security a number of months ago. And the security guy said, "Hey, do you know somebody that works at Hulu? Because I have a request for them." And so we had a great conversation about Hulu. And here this guy was not related to me. It wasn't anybody that I knew personally. And he actually had heard of Hulu. So that was a good sign. So anyways, it's fun to grow the business from sort of this idea to something that people have actually heard of. So this is Hulu. For those of you that don't know, the name Hulu, I chose the name Hulu because it comes from a Chinese parable that describes the Hulu, or proverb, I should say, that describes the Hulu as the holder of precious things. The goal of Hulu is all about premium content, and I'll go into that specifically here in a second. But for those of you that aren't intimately aware of our history, and I would expect that hardly anybody is, before I started sort of in what was to be the office space of Hulu, I actually went to Beijing, China, to actually go and recruit and acquire about a 6-person team to help us get going. And so the founding of Hulu really started in China. And so we thought it would be great to actually choose a name that not only was absent English meaning and connotation, but also, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow bring the Chinese influence into it all as well. So that's the reason for the name Hulu. I wanted to talk about 3 things. The first is a big wave. Give you a little bit of context about the birth of Hulu. The second thing I'd love to talk about is obsessing. We are nothing as a team at Hulu if we're not obsessors, if that is even a word. But I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And I thought it'd just be helpful to share a little bit of our results and then turn it over to you guys so that you can ask whatever question you want. Because I've found that the Q&A portion of these things tends to be the most valuable because you guys have certain things that you're probably curious about. I may or not be able to anticipate and cover them, but certainly if you ask me the question, I'll answer it. And one big thing about Q&A, there is no such thing as a rude question. So whatever you guys want to ask about is totally fine by me. I'm happy to answer anything. So let's talk about a big wave. So this big wave that I would like to talk to you about is this number, 21.4 billion. This is the number of streams in the US last month alone. So a huge number, a number that has more than tripled in the last 36 months. And if you talk to any analyst that covers the internet, they will not only tell you that obviously the internet is a growth category or growth area for the economy, but online video is at the top in terms of the highest growing segment of the internet. And so that's a big deal. And so when you see numbers like this going from nothing to 21.4 billion in a 30-day period, there's something serious going on. And so serious that 3 years ago, not quite 3 years, but 2.5 years ago, the CEO of Fox and the CEO of NBC Universal, 2 guys named Peter Chernin and Jeff Zucker, respectively, they basically shook hands and said, listen, the future is going to happen to us, or we're going to help sort of influence the future with regards to our business. So they shook hands and said, you know what, let's see if we can't work together in terms of pulling our content together and seeing if we can't get out ahead of this on the internet. They gave me a call. I was up in Seattle, as Jim Dean was saying, that I was at Amazon for the previous 9 years and always wanted to go off and do my own thing. And in fact, I was in the process of going off and starting my own thing. And I get this phone call saying, hey, we'd love for you to go to New York and meet with Peter Chernin and Jeff Zucker. And I was like, hey, listen, I've got other things going on. I'm really excited about it. But they said, no, just go and meet them. And who knows, maybe there's a company there that could be interesting. And so what started as a handshake agreement then evolved into a lot of debate and discussion in New York City about actually making a big bet, which is going out and getting private equity, raised $100 million from a company called Providence Equity Partners in Providence, Rhode Island, getting the content assets from NBC Universal and Fox, and they also invested millions of dollars in the actual venture. And we actually got a business going. It was originally called NewCo, which is just a temporary name, then named the company Hulu before we launched. And then we went to private beta on October 29th in 2007. A little bit of trivia. There was a gentleman here from Lulu. Is he still here? Michael. So Michael works at a company called Lulu, and he joined Lulu after this, but I have to say this just because there's no other room I could possibly say this in. So Lulu is a company that's in Raleigh that the founder of Red Hat, one of the founders of Red Hat, runs. And just very shortly before we were to go to launch, Lulu sued us. so we almost didn't launch because a local Raleigh company sued us. And by the way, the founder is a great guy. And so we figured it out. There was a concern that Hulu sounded too much like Lulu, and they're 2 separate businesses, so it was fine. But I've never been able to say that in a room where somebody could know what I was talking about. And you joined after that, so it was you were not the one suing me, so which is nice. So anyway, so a big wave in terms of this online video. So there's something to this online video thing, kind of like, hey, there's something to this e-commerce thing back in 1997. And so when I take a look at that number, 21.4 billion, what I kind of take away from it is that media is an impulse business, and powerful things happen when you make it easier to consume. It's no more complicated than just taking a look at the Starbucks business, which is if you go back in history and take a look at, on a per capita basis, how much premium high-end coffee did consumers consume just in the US 30 years ago, 40 years, 50 years ago? Not too much. But then Starbucks made consuming premium coffee very easy. They made it an impulse business so that on any corner you went to, there was a Starbucks. In fact, there was a big Onion article that was saying they were going to build a new Starbucks in the bathroom of an existing Starbucks. And so that's what, kind of the power of impulse businesses is that if you make it easier to consume, people will consume more of it. And so the notion of Hulu is that we want to make it easier to consume. And I'll go into sort of what I mean by that. And it's in this part, which is also about obsessing. And Hulu is, as I said earlier, I'm a big believer that companies, world-class companies, the best companies on the planet and in history, they have one very common trait, which is they have cultures that are extremely strong. And the cultures, by the way, are not the same, because whoever is the leading car manufacturer might need a different culture than whoever is the leading coffee retailer. But what is interesting is that you talk to the Walt Disney Company, Apple Computer, Starbucks, Amazon, Walmart, they have incredibly strong cultures. And by the way, for what it's worth, when I was in school, culture was never, ever, ever talked about, ever, at Harvard Business School and at Carolina when I was undergrad. I'm telling you, it is one of the most important lessons that you can learn as a professional manager, that culture is everything. And I know it's warm and fuzzy and it's soft and it's not subject to analytics, but most of my job, I'm the chief culture officer of Hulu, as much as I am the CEO. And so let's talk about obsessing, which is a big part about our culture. So this is my office. I didn't do anything to it. I just took a picture of it before heading out here. And a couple of things you might notice is that this is not Sarah Michelle Gellar in person. It's a cardboard cutout. But I'm a big Carolina fan. It's not just because I'm here, but I actually have a portion of the office painted in Carolina blue. And this is, I always keep an autographed basketball on the conference room table and a home and away jersey. And then on the walls are what is whiteboard wallpaper. So the first thing that we did when it was just a team of one is called a vendor and said, hey, can you put whiteboard wallpaper up on all the walls? Because what we wanted to be able to do is instead of racing and writing code for what was to become Hulu, we wanted to write down who we wanted to be. We wanted to write down what our mission was. And we wanted to write down what we wanted our customers to say about us when we were not in the room. Because I think a brand is nothing more than what people say about you when you're not in the room. I'm sure there's fancy academic ways to describe what a brand is, but the way that I think about it, a brand is just what people say about you when you're not there. And that's whether it's your own personal brand or whether it's a company brand. So we spent a lot of time on these walls writing down what our mission was and what we wanted customers to say about us. And so let's dig into what we wrote on that wall. Back before we wrote a line of code. So the first thing we wrote was our mission. And by the way, our mission is incredibly ambitious. It's never ending. It's one of those things that all great missions are bigger than yourselves and bigger than the company. And certainly this is one of them, which is we want to help people find and enjoy the world's premium content when, where, and how they want to. So this means that if you're sitting in a coffee shop in Reykjavik, Iceland, you can watch the latest episode of Heroes, ideally. Or if you're sitting in Starbucks up on Franklin Street, that you can watch a cricket match that's going on in Pakistan, either live or on demand. And so this is going to take time. We know that, but we think that the world deserves a media service like that, where you can get the world's media on your terms. Now, one thing that is not in this statement is there's no mention of the business model. It doesn't say, and it shall forever be free and ad-supported. That was absolutely conscious. We wanted to make sure that we describe what we wanted to do for customers, but how we do it is going to be a subject of the marketplace. And so, I think a lot of it's going to be free ad supported because that's the biggest pond, in terms of monetization against premium content. But there's a lot of content like HBO content where that's not free and ad supported. I don't think it ever will be. That requires a subscription or an a la carte pricing. And so just know that we were very careful not to have, a specific business model in terms of how the pricing would go. Our rallying cry, and this is really important, this gets back to culture, is that we simply want to deliver a service that users, advertisers, and content partners unabashedly love. We want people saying things like, I love Hulu, I'm addicted to Hulu, Hulu is, I'm having an affair with Hulu. And people say these things on Twitter, so we know they're saying these things about us. And this was a very conscious thing that we didn't want to just deliver a service that was good enough Hey, isn't that fine? We wanted to do something that would truly be something that was worthy of positive remark, which means that it has to be stunning. And so we don't always hit this mark, by the way, but this is what keeps us up late at night and keeps us up, gets us up early in the morning. And another thing that I think is unique to Hulu, at least in this space, is that we were very, very careful in the first week that we got going to write down who our customers were. The painfully obvious customer is the user. Everybody that put their hands up who uses Hulu, you're one of our customers. But you are not the only customers. There are two other classes of customers, which include content owners and advertisers, which means that we have to make sure that we deliver a service that content owners unabashedly love, which includes economics and how we handle their brands, and for advertisers that we deliver a service that completely exceeds their expectations in terms of helping them to achieve their objectives. So really tricky when you try and serve those three customers at the same time. It's really easy, by the way, to deliver for customers and customers only. You won't have a business, by the way, but it's really easy if you just focus on one. So our strategy, as I mentioned, is not just good enough, but we want to deliver brain spray awesome quality. And I put this in quotes because we actually did not write this down. This was a user that actually wrote this, and I'll go into that here in a second. So what is brain spray awesome quality? One of the things that has influenced us, we're all a product of our experiences, and I'm no different. When I was a kid, my mom and dad I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm one of 6 kids. They threw us all into our family car, which was this Chevy Beauville 12-passenger cargo van, and we drove down to Orlando, Florida. And I was 10 years old at the time, and I went into Walt Disney World, the Magic Kingdom, for the first time. And you kind of go through the train station to kind of enter onto Main Street. And for me, it just made such a huge impression on me. It just, I think a good way to say it is it almost like burned the corneas of my eyes in terms of just, wow, this is something I've never seen before. And there was many things that I was impacted by that first couple of minutes. One was just the fact that the design was so high in terms of quality. Like everything, the forced perspective, everything led to Cinderella's castle. The fact that the second story of Main Street shops was about 2/3 as high as the first level, and that was by design to make it look like it was bigger than what it was, and again, the forced perspective. But the thing that probably made the biggest impact on me long term was the fact that there were 50,000 people in that park that day, and I couldn't find a gum wrapper on the street to save my life. It was spotless, and it always was, I was always curious about that because I used to go to Kennywood Park up in Pittsburgh, which is a local amusement park, and believe me, there's a lot of gum wrappers all over Kennywood Park, 365 days a year, and everywhere else you look. But this place was different, and I was just completely, I became very passionate about the fact that Walt Disney himself stood for such a high level of quality, and it made a very big impact on me. And what was interesting is that it made such a big impact on me that I actually wanted to go work for the Walt Disney Company. And in fact, that's what I did. When I was here at University of North Carolina, I wrote cold call letters back when, before email. I did everything possible. I sent comic strips. I did all these things to try and get a job at Disney. And I was fortunate. I got a summer internship at Disney in my junior summer in undergrad. And when I went there and went through this training called Disney University, where they help new employees to understand what the Walt Disney Company is all about, they spend a lot of time on the street sweepers. They spend a lot of time, and by the way, they call them cast members because they're very important to pulling off the show that is the Walt Disney World experience. And they spent so much time on why the street sweepers are so important. And for me, that was so confirming that it wasn't just a quirk, it wasn't just a happenstance that the park was so darn clean. It was a belief that this obsessiveness about design and obsessiveness about cleanliness and obsessiveness about quality ultimately would deliver a world-beating company. And I think in the case of Walt Disney theme parks, that's absolutely the case. Nobody ever holds Universal theme parks in the Walt Disney World in the same class ever that I've ever talked to. So this is Hulu. And by the way, our website design was very much influenced by the street sweepers at Walt Disney World. We wanted to make sure that it didn't look like any other website. We wanted to focus on it being very clean, a tremendous amount of white space. Little things like we had arguments about how small we could make the Hulu logo, but yet still have it be legible, because we didn't want Hulu to get in the way. We wanted to make sure that our Cinderella's castle was the show. And so we didn't want the name Hulu to get in the way of the consumer's ability to focus on the actual show. Another thing that we did was we wanted to make sure that all the doorknobs and light switches were battleship gray, in that they were blending into the background so that they were there if you needed them, but they didn't take up kind of visual weight if you didn't need them. So ideally, this gray color of the navigation bar and the TV and the movies, it kind of hides in the background when you're actually not focused on it, because we wanted the brilliant colors to be focused on the images here. And at the time that we did this is in the fall of 2007, the world of online video was 4:3 aspect ratio. It was a box. That's the way the world was for the first 3 years of online video. We were the first ones that actually insisted that every single video be 16:9 aspect ratio. And the reason why we did that is that we thought that widescreen aspect ratio would be a very important subconscious cue to people to say, this content is a cut above. This content is high quality. And so this is something that a lot of folks have actually now taken this approach to online video where they crop everything and make it 16:9. So that was something that was very much influenced by the sense of quality bar that the Walt Disney Company set, and we were very influenced by. A couple of things as well that you talk about obsessing. We want to obsess over users and advertisers alike. And I'll share with you just a couple of things so you can get a sense of, well, what does it mean to obsess in terms of the work product? Where does that lead you? So we were obsessing over advertisers and users, and that we were hearing that users were like, gosh, I don't want to see a minivan ad when I'm in the market for a sports car. Or advertisers saying, gosh, I'm on ESPN SportsCenter, and I have to guess that everybody that watches SportsCenter wants a sports car. But I know that there are some people, myself included, that have little kids, and I'm watching sports all the time, but although I hate to admit it, I'm more in the market for a minivan than I am for a sports car. And so Toyota is wasting their money on me if they put a sports car ad on SportsCenter. So what we do at Hulu is we actually give the user choice. So in an ad break, in some instances, we'll go to an ad break. In this case, it's a Nissan commercial where we let you choose. Do you want to watch a sedan, a sports car, an SUV? And we don't just do this for a given brand portfolio like Coca-Cola, which we clearly do with Coke and Diet Coke and Sprite, but we also do it across different products as well. So users love this because they're in control. They're able to can control their advertising experience, which they have never been able to do before. That means that their engagement and paying attention to the ad just went through the roof, which is ultimately what an advertiser cares about. The advertisers love it because people are watching the products that they want to market. And so they want to talk to me about minivans even though I'm watching a sports program. They want to talk to somebody about a sedan if they're in the market for a sedan, and they don't want to waste money on me on a sports car because I'm just not in the market for it. And so this is a good example of when you obsess over your customers and you listen to them carefully and invent on their behalf, you end up with things that in hindsight are painfully obvious. And by the way, the best inventions always are the ones where you look at me and you're like, well, of course. Why didn't the world do that earlier? This is, again, there's a lot of things that get in the way of inventing. And the most important thing I found is just to kind of get rid of all the noise and listen to your customers and invent on their behalf. Another thing that we do with our advertising, which is relatively unique, is that as the ad is playing, we give a little thumbs up, thumbs down option so that you can tell us if you like the ad or you don't like the ad. That will allow us, as we go forward, to address the service so that we can make it more relevant for you. So if you really enjoyed an ad about, let's say, a certain category or an industry, we can give you more of those. Or if you didn't like an ad, we can make sure that we stop showing you pamper ads if you're not interested in Pampers because you don't have kids or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatnot. And so that's something that as well that we do. Another thing that, again, this obsessiveness is that we relentlessly innovate. And I wanted to show you just one small example that most normal people will think is just ridiculous and crazy. But it's actually, I wanted to share this nuance because I think it's very important to understand what Hulu is about. So on the left here, this is when you do a search for Natalie Raps. So there's a Saturday Night Live skit with Natalie Portman where she's got this wonderful reputation as this like very diminutive, super nice actress, and she never says a swear word. She's like very nice, very formal actress. But she did this fun spoof on Saturday Night Live where she did this rap, and they had to bleep the whole thing because she's swearing all the time. And this is what she looks like in the video. So when you do a search for Natalie Portman or Natalie Raps on Hulu, this is what you get. Now it turns out that there's other SNL cast members in that same video. Andy Samberg is a good example. And so when you do a search for Andy Samberg on Hulu, you get the same video, which is Natalie Raps. But we know that given that you're searching for Andy Samberg, you probably care more about the fact that Andy's in it as opposed to Natalie Portman. And so what we do dynamically is we change the thumbnail to be that moment that Andy Samberg is in the skit as opposed to the canonical thumbnail where Natalie Portman's in the skit. This is the kind of thing that would be most normal companies, most normal people would never prioritize this feature. But for us, it was a very natural thing to do because, well, if you're looking for Andy Samberg, it's much better to actually show all the visuals of Andy Samberg. That's the right thing to do. And so this is just an example of innovation comes in all shapes and sizes. This is one of the smaller pieces of innovation that we do at Hulu, but a really important one in terms of our culture. Another thing that is a product of inventing and obsessing on your customers is I want to show you sort of something that happened this past fall. And this happens, by the way, every day, but I think this is just a good example, and it was tied to the election. So there was a small bug on Hulu that we read about on Twitter where somebody, this guy named Shmuley, actually did this post and said, hey, spotted a small bug on Hulu. It says, as the presidential election approaches. And it was just past midnight, and the presidential election had just finished. And so the verb tense was wrong. It should have been as the presidential election wraps up or wrapped up. So anyways, that's the feedback that we got. By 1:54 a.m., this is from our CTO, Eric Fang, he had already found out about the issue, solved it, published to the site, and fixed it and closed the loop with the user. That all happened in the middle of the night, on Thursday late at night, at 12:34 a.m., all finished out by 1:54 a.m. And so that's an example of what happens when you obsess over your customers. You find yourself reading Twitter a lot. You find yourself kind of getting alerts anytime anybody online writes the word Hulu, so you can understand if you've made a mistake and how to fix it and whatnot. That's what happens when you're obsessive about your customers. And by the way, here's where the quote came from. This is this Brain Spray Awesome quote. My first Hulu experience made my head explode in a brain spray of awesome, which is a good thing. It sounds very messy, but it's a good thing. And this is a first-time user of Hulu. She's a young woman who lives in Chicago, and she has this blog called Chainsaw Calligraphy, which gives you a good window into how creative she is. And it was so delightful to read this quote, because when we read this quote, to us, this is exactly what we're trying to do. This is the response that we're trying to get out of our users. And we don't hit this mark every time, but we think, wow, if we could do this, we're golden. And so what we did was we printed this on the backs of T-shirts. We put this on our walls in our offices. And it was funny, we even went to Chicago, and we had an event with some advertisers, and we invited Marissa. I found her on Facebook and said, yeah, stop by. And she came in, and she saw her quote on napkins. She saw her quote on the back of T-shirts. And so we loaded her up with a bunch of gear, which was fun. So let's talk about results, and then I'll turn it over to Q&A, because that's really, I think, where we're going to probably get the most interesting stuff. So this is just a laundry list of the companies, so you can just get a sense of where we're at. We have about 40 million users. This stat is a couple of months old. We have 480 million monthly streams, up from obviously 18 months ago. PC World Magazine named Hulu the #1 product of 2008. And Time Magazine rated Hulu among the top 5 inventions of 2008. We were right up there with cold fusion. It was ridiculous the other things that they were giving the awards out for, and Hulu was number 5. It was ridiculous. Hulu's been embedded over 3 million times on over 100,000 websites, so you can take the episode of The Office and put it in your personal blog. We've attracted over 200 top content owners, over 230 actually today, including the Walt Disney Company, which made an investment in the company earlier this year. And so now you can catch all your episodes of Lost and Modern Family, which is a really funny show if you haven't watched it yet. And Flash Forward, which is a good show. Warner Brothers, Sony, MGM, et cetera. And so a lot of content partners, which we're very, very excited about. And content partners are seeing a dramatic lift to their business. So when you look at the content partner that has been operating online before their participation in Hulu and after, you're seeing their online stream volume go up multiples, 3x, 4x, 5x. And so a really big deal for these companies that have been online actually for a number of years before Hulu. And then the advertiser demand has significantly exceeded our expectations. We've served over 400 actually now, and we're very, very excited about where we're heading financially and where we already are financially.